Hello, everyone, and welcome to Mondays with Mike and Joe, our quarterly virtual lunch and learn. I'm Nicole Wolfer with Providence Newburgh Health Foundation. A program will begin momentarily. We're looking forward to talking about cancer care in Yamhill County with two members of our incredible cancer team. If you have any questions during the program, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. Mike and Joe will have our guests answer audience questions at the end of our program. I would now like to introduce our Doug Kane, our Executive Director for Providence Newburgh Health Foundation.
Good afternoon. I'm Doug Kane. I'm the Executive Director of the Providence Newburgh Health Foundation. I want to welcome you to our third Mondays with Mike and Joe quarterly program. As the Director of the Foundation, our goal and purpose is connecting people to Providence, focusing on the role the Providence Newburgh Medical Center plays in our community and how caregivers are working to improve health for all who live here. In today's gathering, if you have any questions for Mike and Joe as our guests, down at the bottom of this page, you will see the Q&A feature. Click on that button and you can ask a question. So what do you say we get started? Now I'd like to introduce Mike Donahue, a man who spent over 40 years as news anchor at Coin 6 in Portland. Mike is also a current board member of the Providence Newburgh Health Foundation, and we are grateful for his service to the community, to Providence and our community. Please welcome Mike Donahue.
I thank Doug for that kind introduction, and I want to say that I'm excited about what we're going to learn today. And I'm joined by my co-host, Joe Yoder. He is the Chief Executive Officer at Providence Newburgh. And Joe, you're facing an important deadline. How is the hospital running today?
Great to see you, Mike. And yeah, you're right. I think most folks know that we have a vaccine mandate that goes into effect today and will become potentially an impact tomorrow. But I'm proud to report that at Providence Newburgh, we will be here to serve our community. We won't be closing any services. And just a testament and a thank you to all of our caregivers who know how important it is to be here to care for everybody.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, thrilled to hear that. And I hope the community hears that as well. I'm happy to be here with you all. We've got a fun conference today, so thank you to our virtual audience for joining us. It is October, so you might notice that Mike and I both have our pink on for Breast Cancer Awareness Month. We have two special guests joining us from Providence Cancer Institute. The first is Dr. Kelly Perlowitz. She attended Rutgers Robert Wood Johnson Medical School, completing her residency at Temple University before landing at OHSU for her fellowship. We're happy to have Dr. Perlowitz here at Providence Newburgh, serving as an oncology physician in the Newburgh Cancer Clinic. We're also joined today by Dr. Janelle Utzi. Dr. Utzi grew up in Salem and attended the University of Kansas School of Medicine before returning to Oregon. Dr. Utzi is a surgeon specializing in breast cancer surgeries, and she recently joined the Providence Cancer Institute after being a member of our Providence General Surgical team for several years prior to that. So thank you, Dr. Utzi. Appreciate you joining us today as well.
An oncologist and a surgeon. Thank you both for joining us today. I suspect that some of the people in our viewing audience today don't even know that Newburgh has a cancer center, but we're going to let them know about that today. Dr. Perlowitz, let me begin with you. I'm curious about how you chose cancer care as a career path, something that started back in medical school, perhaps?
Actually, it was more in residency. I was a electrical engineer actually in undergrad and thought I wanted to do cardiology. I realized I didn't want to just be in a lab and wanted to work with people. So that's why I went back to med school and thought I would do electrophysiology, so the heart rhythms. And then really in internal medicine residency, it was really the oncologists and the hematologists who became my mentors. It was those patients I really connected with. And it almost felt like a calling at that point. So that's when I decided to do a HemOnc fellowship.
Those mentors and those callings are very important.
Yes.
Thank you for hearing that. Dr. Utzi, I understand that you were a point guard for your basketball team. Was that in college?
I did have the opportunity to play basketball in college at a small college. I was probably more of an off guard or a forward, but yeah, I played point guard some.
Well, now you find yourself as the point person on a cancer care team. Would you explain I know it is an interdisciplinary approach that you take to breast cancer surgery at the Providence Clinic.
Yeah, so I feel like partially due from maybe being from a big family and playing a lot of sports, I'm kind of wired to be part of a team. And I think that's part of what's drawn me to breast cancer and breast care, because it's very essential for breast cancer treatment to happen within a team of providers. It's not just surgery, it's not just chemotherapy, it's not just radiation, it's a lot of people understanding new data, understanding treatment standards, and putting their heads together to create a plan for each individual patient.
I remember I was working on a story when I worked for Providence, doing news stories for them about the program, I think it's called Transitions, over at Providence St. Vincent. And they even have a nurse navigator to help people through this multidisciplinary approach you're talking about.
Absolutely. There's literally an entire team of people, more than a basketball team, more like a football team, of people, starting with nurse navigation in radiology. When someone finds out they need a biopsy, we have specialized nurses that can call and talk them through that process, figure out which location is going to be most convenient for them to have their biopsy, talk with them about the process of learning their results and what might happen next. The radiologist is visiting with our patients at our centers where biopsies happen on the day of the biopsy, explaining things, again, kind of talking about not just the biopsy itself, but what might happen next. Another nurse navigator picks up the ball at that point and makes sure that they're getting in to see the next specialist. We have a weekly conference that we all put our heads together on and talk about patients. So it's very comprehensive.
Yeah. Well, we're glad you are our point person for this team. Joe?
That's inspiring to hear about the team approach. I know that's something that we strive for, to have a multidisciplinary team all coming together in service to the patient. When we think about cancer care, I'd love to hear, Dr. Perlowitz, you guys have a nice new building there and a space to care for patients. Can you tell us a little bit about how patient care might have changed, or the experience has changed since moving over to the new Medical Plaza?
For sure, it's been fantastic. We've been here, I guess, almost 2 years. It'll be December of 2019. We moved into this new building, and it's just a lot more space, which meant a lot 2 years ago and means even more now, when we all know what 6 feet of distance looks like. We did not have to change our layout in terms of being able to treat through COVID. We had appropriate distancing for staff and patients, which would not have been the case in our old building. So that alone has been huge. And I think just having the bigger space and more flexible area, we're able to bring on more services. So that includes cancer surgery. So Dr. Yutzi obviously has joined us as a breast surgeon, and Dr. Heather Mary, who's one of our thoracic surgeons, also comes down now to Newburgh a couple times a month to see patients here. She's not operating at Newburgh, but she can do the initial consult, the post-op follow-up, and follows pulmonary nodules, and really has added a lot to our community that way. We now have oncology nutrition, and there's space here to see them. We're sort of a pilot program with the behavioral health residency program. And so we have an embedded resident in our office 1 day a week now to offer free behavioral health services to all of our patients. So really, just have really been able to expand all those support services. And we're in the process of hiring our own nurse coordinator as well, to sort of take that handoff from the diagnostic imaging Providence nurse navigators, sort of to hand off to the oncology world. So lots of good things have happened and more on the horizon.
And if I understand correctly too, Dr. Utsi, you're now co-located in the plaza as well?
Yes, I moved over here at the end of September. So I've been over here about 3 weeks, and it's been great to be in that close physical proximity. Kelly and I and the oncology team, we really have worked closely together since I've been here. I've been really grateful for that. But to be in the same physical location and be able to pop in a patient room and say hi or check on something that Dr. Perlowitz or one of the other providers has a question about. Maybe they see a patient that needs something quickly and used to be a phone call away, but now they can just pop their head in my office and we try to get things taken care of. It's been great.
That's phenomenal. Just to think of you guys being sort of that close and neighbors almost in that care is great to hear. Very cool.
I want to ask a couple of questions about COVID. We know that COVID has affected the way medical care is delivered. I'm going to speak specifically about or ask specifically about cancer patients. Has it negative? Let me start with Dr. Perlowitz. Has COVID negatively affected the treatment that cancer patients are getting?
I think probably the biggest negative impact, I'll be honest, is the visitor restrictions that had to be put in place. And they were appropriate, right? It's as much as the infusion room is spaced out, it is an open room. And, you know, if we allow visitors with every patient, that's fewer patients we can have. But I think that has been probably the hardest impact across all of our patients, is just not being able to have that support person kind of with them for the infusion. They can
have treatments been delayed too? I know that's happened with other drugs.
Initially, before we really sort of understood what COVID was, how it was spread, you know, there were some delays. I think on both parts, you know, us delaying things that weren't absolutely essential, and then, you know, an appropriate level of fear for patients as well. Now we are full steam ahead, kind of back to normal in terms of treatments. It's safe to give. And so really in the last probably year, not so much, but initially as we were kind of figuring out COVID and what it meant and what we needed to do to keep patients and staff safe, there were a few week or two delays, but really I think throughout this whole thing, the health system has realized the importance of treating cancer in a timely manner. And so really, I think the cancer delays have been kept to a minimum.
We have learned so much in these past 2 years on how to care for patients, all kinds of patients. I'm concerned about the vaccine. Dr. Utsi, is it safe for cancer patients to take the vaccine? And if so, which one? Or is there a benefit to one or over another?
It is safe for, the vaccine is safe, and it's especially important for patients that are at risk, immunocompromised in some way. Cancer patients fall into that category. My advice would be to have a conversation with your oncologist, your surgeon, some member of your cancer treatment team, or if you don't have cancer and you're seeing your primary care provider, touch base with your healthcare provider, somebody that you know and trust, and ask questions. If you have questions about which pharmacist is another good resource. Ask questions about which type of vaccine might be most appropriate for you. There are some nuances there, but it's safe, it's effective, and it's making a difference. We're seeing that.
Great to hear.
Yeah, I'd love to hear from either one of you. We know that the Newburgh Cancer Institute is part of a larger Providence Cancer Institute. Could you share with us some of the benefits that being part of a larger cancer network like that has, maybe along the lines of access to clinical trials or new treatments, things like that?
So maybe I'll start. I can answer the clinical trials. And so we are part of the Providence Cancer Institute, and as such have access to all of their clinical trials. And That can mean anything from actually administering the trial here in Newburgh. Most of the phase 3, which are the later stage trials, and the cooperative group trials are all available here. And so patients can receive all of their care here, including clinical trials. Some of the phase 1 earlier studies, which require a lot of sort of in detail laboratory processing, as well as newer drugs, do generally have to be administered up at our Providence Portland location, where our research team is based. But being part of the Providence Cancer Institute, getting in, knowing those trials are available, and then getting the patient in to see the appropriate people can be pretty seamless. So they have the benefit most of the time of being treated here. And if there's something in Portland that would be better, we can get them up there. And I think that goes for most of the resources of the Cancer Institute. Maybe I'll let Dr. Yuzzi talk about our cancer conference a little bit, but I think that's another great opportunity.
Yeah, both Kelly and I are part of, I guess I call it the team, the larger cancer care team. So she has oncologists, colleagues here in Newburgh and in Portland that she's constantly talking to and bouncing things off. I have, there's 2 other breast surgeons that I'm fortunate to have as partners. And so while we can't offer 100% of services maybe that are available at Franz, a lot of that has to do with some of the research. The vast majority of care can be delivered here in Newburgh or close by. And both of us are pretty passionate about connecting patients with excellent, highest quality care as close to home as possible, because that makes a difference. If you can go in for infusion and leave and go do something with your family and it's 10 or 20 minutes away as opposed to an hour and a half, that makes a big difference in terms of quality of life during treatment. Surgery wise, I do most of my surgery here at Newburgh. I'm going to be expanding and operating out at Providence, Willamette Falls some. There are times that I'll operate, say, with a plastic surgeon, either here or at St. Vincent. So we work really hard to use all of the resources available with the primary goal of getting patients an excellent outcome. And as often as we can do that closer where they live, or if they have a specific preference, we're working with them individually. We have a weekly breast cancer conference where citywide oncology, surgery, plastic surgery, radiology, radiation, pathology, we're all integrative medicine. We're meeting weekly, we're presenting cases and talking about different situations, going over new data, again, putting our heads together to create the best possible plan for each individual patient. And it's an amazing resource, and a really great connection for us to stay ingrained in the larger cancer center.
It's a team approach again that you talked about.
That's right.
Dr. Perlowitz, this being a Breast Cancer Awareness Month, what's something that a individual could do to, improve their odds of beating cancer?
I think, mammograms have been proven to detect breast cancer earlier when it is more curable with less treatment. So maybe just needing surgery or and not needing chemotherapy. So I think really a mammogram is the absolute best thing you can do if you're a woman over 40. If you know or love a woman over 40, encourage them to get a mammogram. Take care of their kids while they go to get a mammogram. Really do everything you can to sort of promote that early detection. It really does. I think Dr. Yuzzi and I hundreds of women who end up with a early stage 1 breast cancer that's very treatable and curable because it was picked up on a screening mammogram. And the technology we have here in Newburgh is the newer 3D tomosynthesis mammograms, which the foundation was instrumental in helping to support a few years ago. So really getting a local mammogram is top notch and highly encouraged.
Joe, let me ask you a question. Are there plans to expand cancer care services here at Providence Newburgh, for example, a women's imaging center perhaps, or that transitions program that I mentioned over there at Providence St. Vincent, where they've got everything from nurse navigators to undergarments to even wigs. Anything like that coming?
And I hope so, Mike. I think you're hinting at one of the visions I've had about having a women's imaging center here on campus. I mean, we have the components of that. I mean, Dr. Perlowitz just spoke about, we have TOMO, we have the 3D mammography capability here, but can we create a space that's more inviting to women, that is a better experience for them to come get their annual exam, along with other services that we might be able to offer here. So to answer your question, yes, I've got a vision for it. I know these folks on the phone with us would love to see that as well. It's going to take a community effort and a community partnership to see something like that come to fruition. But we are in the early stages of trying to figure out how we can put the pieces together to make that happen in the future.
And I'm sure both of you, Dr. Perlowitz, Dr. Utzi, are excited about that future as well.
Very.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
Mhm.
Dr. Utzi, I had one other question for you. You mentioned a patient being able to receive much of the care that they need here at Newburgh. What are the breast surgery options somebody has that they wouldn't have to leave the community for? What can we do here on campus?
I can do it all. There is really, we can. There is a very specific and a very specific type of reconstruction called flap-based reconstruction that we do not do here. That requires some special equipment, higher volumes, things like that. And it's best done at a larger facility. And there are things that are simply better done at other places, but we really can do everything else here. Lumpectomy, which is removal of the mass and just getting a rim of normal tissue around it, but leaving the remainder of the breast tissue in place. That's a great option for a lot of women. You can do that here. Mastectomy with reconstruction. I have some plastic surgeons that I work closely with that operate here frequently. And we are doing we're doing a great job, and patients are having great outcome. We have the ability in some cases to do same-day surgery for even mastectomy with reconstruction. And that, again, is that team approach. We have a great anesthesia team that helps us with some nerve block techniques that are done before incisions are made to reduce pain. We have a physical therapy team here on campus that are sometimes meeting patients before and after surgery, so that they're not only getting a great result in terms of having their cancer removed, but they're getting a great return to normal activity and functionality as they recover. So there really is, there's very little that we can't do here. There's reasons why we do surgery and some portions of treatment at other facilities. But it's a conversation with each individual patient about what they need and what their preference is in some cases.
Dr. Perlowitz, we hear all the time about fundraising efforts for, specifically for breast cancer. The walk, the run every year was for a while. Is this money that's being raised, is it improving patient outcomes? I guess that's the question I want to ask.
Absolutely. I think not only is it improving survival with later stages of breast cancer, it's also improving treatments in terms of how can we find out if we can do less. So all of the research money we've made huge strides. I've been in practice now 11 years. I just recertified for my boards. We have to take them every 10 years. And the treatments that are available now that weren't even available 10 years ago have changed significantly. So absolutely, the research, the funding, all of that has made huge strides in not only improving survival, but also improving quality of life, minimizing the amount of chemo we necessarily have to do, because we now have immunotherapy and targeted therapy. And it's just been amazing in just the last 10 years even.
I've seen the groundbreaking research that they've been doing over at Providence, Portland at the cancer center there. Dr. Yutzi, is that where most of this money is going in, to research, or are there other fields that are benefiting as well?
Well, research is supported significantly by fundraising, by donors, and it really does take people in the community stepping up and saying, I care about this, I'm going to contribute to this, take what I can give and do something good with it. And so absolutely, fundraising benefits research, and research benefits all of us, but fundraising also goes towards things like Kelly mentioned, 3D mammography here in Newburgh, which really is the standard of care, and we're able to offer it because of fundraising efforts from the foundation and other members of the community, even providers in this community. I think that there is a great deal of growth that could happen here in terms of what we're able to offer patients in our community in terms of cancer care, not just breast cancer, but cancer care in general, with something like a women's imaging center or a transitions program that helps women find bras and clothes that fit well after surgery that changes the way they look. Nurse navigation services, not just for breast cancer, but for all cancer types, so that we're helping patients know what comes next. We're connecting them with resources in the community to provide them, again, with the highest level of care close to home. All of those things are supported by fundraising efforts, and sometimes the money does go into the, larger system, but very often the money can stay here in Yamhill County, especially when we have a specific target or a specific project that we're working toward.
Well, Nicole, I suppose we have some questions from our audience.
We do, Mike. Perfect timing. We have a couple of audience questions. The first one is, are there any types of cancer that cannot be treated at Providence Newburgh?
I think doing what we do well in Newburgh and knowing what we can do very well, but also knowing our limits, is what allows us to do such a good job, in my opinion. So with some exceptions, we generally do not treat acute leukemias here. Those many times involve an inpatient stay, need for specialized oncology nursing. So those will be treated at Prov Portland or Prov St. Vincent, where they have a dedicated team. Some of the rarer sarcomas, because they're just such a rare tumor and do benefit from a larger volume center, we do not always treat here in Newburgh. But most other things, we certainly can, sometimes needing resources from outside the community, such as gynecologic oncology. They may have to see the surgeon up in Portland, but could get chemo here. So I think, but just about everything else we can treat here. We don't have pediatric oncology. I guess I should say that.
I think to answer that question, one of the things that's important to understand is there's multiple things that go into treatment. So very often treatment does involve surgery and oncology. And breast surgery we can do here. There's colon surgery that can be done by our surgeons here in Newburgh. Things like thoracic surgery, surgery of the chest, sarcoma surgery is very specialized. We don't do that here, and I am in 100% agreement with Kelly. We know what we can do well, and we know our limits. But most importantly, we know how to help people if we can't be the ones taking care of them. And so a whole lot of times people end up in Portland because of something that they need that they can't have here, but they're not always aware that they can come back for part of it, whether that's support services, chemotherapy, things like that. And so I think it's important for people to talk to their providers and ask, what can I what can I have done closer to where I live, because we have a lot to offer.
That's great. That's great that we have so many options here close to home. Another question is, have there been any recent breakthroughs or new treatment options for metastatic breast cancer?
Yes, there have been lots. It depends on what the prognostic markers are. So whether it's estrogen receptor positive or HER2 positive, but there have been many breakthroughs in actually all of those subtypes. So lots of new medication. Some of it involves chemo, but actually a lot of them are more targeted therapies or immunotherapy, which have been found to be more effective and fewer side effects. So yes, even in the metastatic setting, we are making a lot of progress.
Great. And then one last question. You had mentioned behavioral health as a service that Providence offers to cancer patients. Can you talk a little bit about what services Providence has to support the mental health for a cancer patient?
Yes, so lots of different resources. We have an oncology social worker who is part of our team. Every new oncology patient in our office does get screened. It's based on national guidelines. It's a distress screening. And so anyone who scores high on the distress screening will get evaluated. Anyone who has other needs identified or asks for support. So we have an oncology social worker who's here, part of our group. And then there are a number of support groups available through the Cancer Center as well as the local community. I think if there is a benefit of COVID, it's that our online resources and our ability to do things like this and online support groups have gotten a lot better. So that's actually opened up a lot of resources that people can access from their home. We do have behavioral health, as I mentioned, that's an embedded program, and actually we're the pilot site for the whole Cancer Institute. So this is not something that they would have in Portland, but because of the work that Dr. Turgeson has done with George Fox in the past, we have this embedded behavioralist, and actually kind of working through how can we utilize those services with breast cancer patients, and sometimes almost evaluate things before there's maybe an issue, and how do we do that maybe pre-op before they have surgery. And then just honestly, our staff are fantastic in, especially those patients going through infusion treatment. There's a lot of time they spend back in the infusion room. And I think our staff are just top notch in terms of noticing changes or issues their patients say things and tying them into those resources. So.
Yeah, the quarterback or the point guard metaphor really applies as we've learned today. I mean, it's a whole host of people that are taking care of you, not just one person.
Yeah, our program through Providence Cancer Institute and our program here in Newburgh, it's very comprehensive, and I think it's important for patients to know that not only are we focused on treating cancer and getting them the best possible outcome, we're 100% committed to their full recovery back to functionality, back to a good quality of life in what I refer to my patients as the new normal. Things won't be the same, but getting back to enjoying work and activities with your kids without pain, working through changes in the way you look and feel about yourself, physical therapy, integrative medicine, behavioral health, all of those things are equally as important on the other side of treatment. And we're working really hard to integrate that for a great long-term outcome for patients. And we're seeing really positive results.
That's great. That's all the audience questions I have for today. Dr. Perlowitz, Dr. Utzi, is there any last words of wisdom you'd like to leave our audience with today?
I just like to say thank you to the foundation and the support that they have given to the Cancer Institute over the past decade plus. I think, as you can hopefully tell, Dr. Yutzi and I are pretty committed to this community in Newburgh, and I think the same goes for the foundation. It's a pretty special place we have here, so thank you for your interest and your support, and get your mammogram.
Yeah, she took the words out of my mouth. I agree with all of that. We're really fortunate to, I'm fortunate I live here, my kids go to school here. I'm fortunate to be able to take care of patients here and make so many connections with people in the community. And our hospital and our patients are fortunate to have the foundation working behind them to improve services for patients here. So we appreciate you, and yeah, get your mammogram, get a breast exam. If you have questions about whether or not you should be getting one, talk to your doctor. But it's important.
Great. Well, thank you both. We will let you get back to taking care of patients, but thank you so much for taking time today to join us for Mondays with Mike and Joe.
Thank you.
Mike, Joe, thank you guys as well. We are always so glad to have you here with us. And now I would like to welcome back Doug Kane, the Executive Director of the Providence Newburgh Health Foundation.
Thank you, Nicole, and a big thank you to Dr. Perlowitz and to Dr. Yutzi for joining us today. And thank you for all of you for joining us today as well. As a reminder, our next Mondays with Mike and Joe is scheduled for Monday, January 10th at 12 noon. We will be joined by Elise Yarnell and Father Chris Fabre to talk about issues facing the Newburgh community, including the need for supportive housing, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how Providence values are reflected in our support of the Newburgh community. It'll be a great conversation, so be sure to mark your calendar and tune in. We also would like to invite you to support our Cancer Fund during October, which is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Donations can be made at the link shown on your screen, and there are several fun ways to support cancer care at Providence Newburgh this month. First, Chehalem Winery and the Stoller Family Estate are donating a portion of their rosé sales to the Providence Newburgh Cancer Fund during the month of October. Be sure to stop by Chehalem's Winery's tasting room in downtown Newburgh or head out to Stoller's Family Estate to pick up a bottle or two. Next, we invite you to join us at the Human Bean on October 22nd for the annual Coffee for a Cure Day. The Human Bean will be donating all proceeds. That's right, 100% of proceeds from all sales on October 22nd to the Providence Newburgh Cancer Fund. If you would like more information regarding the Providence Newburgh Health Foundation and ways you can support our cancer patients, visit our website at providencefoundations.org/Newburgh. That's providencefoundations.org/Newburgh. You can also email or call me. On the screen is my contact information. Also, if you have any other questions for Mike and Joe, let me know as well. We will be following up on questions not answered during this program via email. Thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to you joining us again on Monday, January 10th.